area and talk a little bit. Mm. I'm still eating a meal. You know how informal we are. I'm gonna break down some stuff. We're gonna talk boxing, and hmm, I got so much to say on this topic. Uh, been hashing it out today as I was talking to myself about it. I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about it. All right. Old school versus new school boxing. The best of the new school or the best of this era, new generation of fighters, and roll all the way back to some who we consider icons. But what I want to do, because people have so much emotional attachment to boxers, boxers make you feel a certain way. Certain boxers that you like make you feel a certain way when they win. I'm going to take a boxer and I'm going to talk about him in a realistic way and separate it from the mythos, nostalgia of the boxer. The boxer I'm going to talk about is Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Been doing a little homework on him, and I was shocked at what I saw. If I asked any OG out there, any old school boxer, or even the new school guys, or the new school fans, or the OGs out there, I'd say Marvin Hagler versus Mike McCallum. Who'd win? Well, I say Marvin Hagler. I'm talking about anybody who was at middleweight versus Julian Jackson. Who would win? Marvin Hagler versus Sumbu Kalembe or Frank Tate or I forgot his name. It's crazy. If I were to say Marvin Hagler versus any one of those guys, you guys would say Marvin Hagler. And the reason you'll give is, man, he had a tough chin, he was strong, he was like a tank and he came at you. He could switch southpaw to orthodox, he could box, and he could bang, and he hit hard. Part of that is true, and part of it is myth. I'll ask you this. Aside from Thomas Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, okay, and Mugabe, name me one outstanding fighter with an outstanding record at Marvin Hagler face. Okay, for the OGs out there is one I can think of who was outstanding that Thomas Hearns faced. Do you know who that is? And it is an outstanding fighter, even though he never became world champion. Okay, so those of you who don't know, Marvin Hagler faced Benny Briscoe. Benny Briscoe. Outstanding boxer, great inside fighter, bob and weave style, slip and slide. Outstanding fighter. Hagler got the unanimous decision over Benny Briscoe. Benny Briscoe was very old at that time, but Benny Briscoe fought way into his 40s. Okay? Now, aside from Benny Briscoe, aside from the guys I just named, I'll add in Vito Antuofermo, and I'll add in also Alan Minter. But aside from those guys, who else has Marvin Hagler faced? In fact, here's what I will add to you. Marvin Hagler faced guys who should never have faced him in championship fights. His inaugural fight for the IBF title was against a fighter. I'm not going to mention his name. You guys go look it up. Who never faced any sort of, the competition he faced was weak. Very, very weak competition. There wasn't a fight to say that he stepped up in that prepared him for the fight with Marvin Hagler. And Hagler stopped him relatively quickly. A lot of Marvin Hagler's defenses were against guys who are okay fighters to trash. They weren't Julian Jacksons. They weren't Michael Nunns. They weren't Frank Tates. They weren't Sumbu Kalembes. They weren't Mike McCallums. In fact, here's an even more interesting fact. The fighters who Marvin Hagler made his reputation over were guys who weren't even middleweights. Here's something for you to know. Marvin Hagler was stripped of the WBA and IBF belts because he failed to face his mandatories. He failed to face Frank Tate and Sumbu Kalembe. They were the mandatories for his WBA and IBF belts. Instead of facing legitimate middleweights who would have put him to the test, no doubt about it, he chose to face a welterweight in Sugar Ray Leonard, where Sugar Ray Leonard last fought at welterweight, who hadn't fought in 5 years. Think about that. And he lost to that welterweight. The fight, whether you agree or not, was close enough. I think it was wider, but that's my opinion. Was close enough that the welterweight beat him. Obviously, he couldn't live that down. And that's why he left boxing. He also didn't want to face the upcoming fighters. And what was Marvin Hagler? 32 years old? Still in his prime. Because the competition that Marvin Hagler had faced was not the competition that was now there and present. The competition that was there and present was much more difficult than any of the competition he had faced before, because they were legitimate middleweights or guys coming up from 154 who were solid. We're talking guys like Julian Jackson, Mike McCallum coming up from 154. We're talking middleweights, legitimate middleweights. It's like Michael Nunn, tall, with a 72-inch reach, southpaw, could box his socks off and stop you. We're talking about Frank Tate, who went on to become a guy that Michael Nunn beat. I believe the only stoppage in his whole entire career was from Michael Nunn. Okay. I'm sorry. Sumbu Kalembe as well was stopped by Michael Nunn, but he also was a very slick fighter who had a reputation at 160, yes, of being a very good champion and a very well-schooled champion. Beat a lot of really good names. 160, went up to 168. I believe he finished his career at 168. These were bigger guys than Marvin Hagler. And Marvin Hagler had never faced a champion, a legitimate 160-pound champion who had a long championship career. He faced nobody like that. or no legitimate long reigning champion. Alan Minter was champion for 2 fights. Vito Antuofermo for 1 fight. But these guys are guys on his resume. Now check this out. Everybody praises Marvin Hagler for beating John Mugabe. Do you know who John Mugabe ever beat in his career? Who has John Mugabe ever beaten in his career? He's got a lot of first round knockouts. He's got a lot of early knockouts. He stopped a lot of guys. But who? Who did John Mugabe actually stop and beat that made him such this great beast that they call? Nobody. In fact, he wasn't even world champion when he faced Marvin Hagler. He was ranked pretty highly in the rankings. But the guys he was put in the ring against were not world beaters. They were guys to make him look good, make him look like a killer. Remind me of Triple G in some respects. Even after he was beaten by Marvin Hagler, he was beaten by a guy for the 154 championship that nobody remembers. After that, he finally got to win the championship a couple fights later after beating a couple of guys again who we don't ever remember in history as even good fighters. He beat all those guys. And then after he was done, he beat a Frenchman to become, it was Rene Jacquot or Rene Lacroix or something like that. He beat that dude to become, for the first time, he became the WBA, or I think it's WBC super welterweight champion of the world. And in 2 or 3 fights, wasn't defenses, I think, 2 or 3 fights after, he was beaten by Terry Norris. Knocked out cold. How is Terry Norris, a 154-pounder, knocking out John Mugabe, but Marvin Hagler goes 10 rounds with him? Think about what I'm saying. Sometimes the hype is more than the reality. He never became world champion ever again and was beaten by a number of other guys. John the Beast Mugabe was like WWE style. He was hyped. It was a great fight with Marvin Hagler, but he was a hyped fighter. He had never been tested. He had never even gone the distance with anybody. Everybody talks about it. Marvin Hagler versus Mugabe. But everybody forgets. Mugabe wasn't a champion. Mugabe had never been at that level. He gave Hagler a good fight. The difference between nostalgia, mythos of a fighter, I always talk about this over and over again, and the reality of that fighter are 2 different things. Marvin Hagler fought at 160. He was a 160-pounder. He never challenged himself to go up to 175. He never challenged himself against bigger fighters. He fought at 160. He never fought below. He never went down in weight. He never went up in weight. Yet I see people spitting on and talking smack about Zab Judah. I see people spitting on and talking smack about Juan Manuel Marquez. How can you do that? Today, people want to trash talk Terrence Crawford. A man who challenged himself and went up in weight multiple times. Now, am I against Marvin Hagler for not facing these young, strong champions and he wanted to retire from the sport of boxing? That's on him. He could do that. He had faced names. He had faced big names. We could say Hagler faced everybody of his time and era, and we can give him that rest. But you cannot be applying that to Marvin Hagler, saying he faced everybody. Marvin Hagler faced everybody. You know, them young, strong lions, he didn't need to face them young, strong lions, even though he was himself still young. I mean, he faced everybody. He was discouraged from boxing. You left boxing. right? You know, he was stripped because he didn't face uh, uh, Frank Tate and Sumbu Kalimbe, right? It's okay. We give Marvin Hagler a pass on that. But you want to go in on fighters like, Pacquiao or Mayweather, or you want to go in on fighters. Oh, he didn't face this young guy. He didn't face those young strong lions. He was supposed to face those young strong. How you can be inconsistent like that? You gave Marvin Hagler a pass. In fact, he quit on boxing. He gave up on boxing. But y'all gonna make excuses for him. Oh, well, he was discouraged because he was robbed. Shut up. Shut up. He got beat by a welterweight. Embarrassing. He got beat by a welterweight. That's embarrassing. A welterweight beat him. And he never tried to get back. Talking about he was robbed. Man, Marvin Hagler. And then this is the guy that's been talking smack about present day fighters. Marvin Hagler. I had people say to me how Marvin Hagler, James Toney, great defensive fighter, but he couldn't beat Marvin Hagler. I'm like, Nish, shut up. Shut up. Marvin Hagler, James Toney was way after Marvin Hagler's time, but Marvin Hagler couldn't handle a James Toney. Marvin Hagler ain't that big a guy. What, he's 5'8", 5'9"? James Toney would destroy Marvin Hagler. What is wrong with you people? James Toney's he's a big middleweight. Michael Nunn was a big middleweight. These weren't guys like, they weren't, first of all, they weren't stupid fighters like Thomas Hearns. How Thomas Hearns fought Marvin Hagler. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you being tough don't mean nothing. Iron Barkley is the guy I was thinking about. Roberto Duran beat Iron Barkley. Why? Iron Barkley, everybody want to say he was a great boxer and blah, 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 blah. He was an all right boxer, but that wasn't his forte. His forte was banging. He was a brawler. He was a banger. Duran was a banger. Don't get it twisted. Duran was a brawler, a banger. He wasn't really a guy that cut off the ring. He bullied you to the ropes. Let's be real about this. Iron Barkley was a banger. One of the greatest boxers. James Toney did a clinic on Iron Barkley. He beat the shit out of him and stopped him. Michael Nunn outboxed him. He's not a boxer. All right? And I'm not trying to diss Iron Barkley, because Iron Barkley accomplished a lot and did a lot from 160 all the way up to 190 cruiserweight. So I'm not disrespecting Iron Barkley. He did a hell of a lot. Did a lot, accomplished a lot. Got win where he, got wins where nobody expected him to get wins. All right. But Duran, all you got to have is the right footwork, It's about footwork with Duran. It's how your feet move. You got the right footwork, you outbox Duran. Because Duran, besides his bait and switch, Duran he's not this exquisite boxer that everybody likes to talk about. No, he was a brawler. He was a banger. He roughed you up on the inside. He pull counter you. He feint you one way, bait you, feint you one way, and they come in. He always had to use his quickness and speed to come in. Then his head into your chest, and he push you to the ropes and bully you and rough you up. That's Duran. So a lot of people get the wrong ideas about about certain fighters. If you don't understand a fighter's style, if you don't understand what they do, then you're always going to be somebody who gets caught up in the moment. I'm not saying those fights weren't exciting in the 80s, And we don't get as much exciting fights like that anymore. People also were more naive in the 80s. But you got to understand, boxing as a sport evolves. The quality of opposition that the guys today face. Look, they talk about the Four Kings like if that's the greatest thing since ever. But that's more myth. At welterweight, how many kings did they have? They had four. Benitez. They had Benitez, Duran, Hearns, and Leonard, right? If you look at it, today, there's more packed talent than back then at welter. We got Crawford, Spence, Garcia, Thurman, Porter, Ugas. That's more than four. Lipinets. That's a lot of names. That's a packed division. Oh shit, I forgot Ennis. Ortiz. That's a packed division. Broner. That's a packed division. That's 100 times better than the Four Kings time. Lightweight's another packed division. It's not just four horsemen up in there. There's a lot. You got Lomachenko. You got Haney, Garcia, Lopez, Davis, Stevenson. It's a packed division. Campbell, Linares. It's a packed division. Okay? But everybody talks about the Four Kings as if that's the greatest thing ever. Duran accomplished a lot. Hearns accomplished a lot. Them was the only two of the Four Kings that accomplished a lot. Like a lot. Today's fighters, Pacquiao, Mayweather, De La Hoya, Marquez, have accomplished a hell of a lot more than them guys. Hell of a lot more. And the youngins got a higher standard to live up to. Pacquiao's still fighting to this day. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. I said I think he's a greater fighter than Floyd is because of the losses, the wins, the whole encapsulation of boxing, and then all this stuff he does outside of boxing. But I said Floyd is definitely a better fighter than Manny Pacquiao. I'll give you hands down. When you're talking the best ever, Floyd is the best ever, in my opinion. And when you're talking about the greatest fighters of all time, Pacquiao's up there with them. Top 10, top 15. Mayweather, the same thing. Top 10, top 15 of all time. And it's all subjective, so it depends on what you think. Me, I got Floyd way up there, somewhere in the top 10. Pacquiao's definitely somewhere in the top 5, top 10, somewhere there. You're talking about greatest, that is, and that has to do with a lot of the public perception. But anyway, I say that only to say, and there's a lot of fighters through history. And I don't really like ranking fighters like that, but that's based on public perception. It doesn't really care. I don't really care where you rank them anyway. But in my opinion, Pacquiao is one of the greatest fighters of all time. And we're talking top 10, top 5, top 10. He's up there. Durability, the achievements in fighting so many different weights of fighters, the not just the accomplishments, but the quality of fighters he's beaten. Yes, there are a lot of asterisks on him, but the quality of fighters he has beaten, you have to factor that in. The fact that he's actually had more welterweight fights than Floyd has. You got to factor all of that in, you know. So I mean, Pacquiao is one of the greatest fighters of all time. Period. You know, and I mean, Canelo's on his way as well, and some of these new breed fighters. But I use Marvin Hagler as an example. Up today I found out some extra information that actually Sugar Ray Leonard was supposed to face Julian Jackson after he had beaten Terry Norris back in 1989 and won the WBA Championship of the World, super welterweight. Sugar Ray Leonard was supposed to face the winner of that fight. He ended up 2 years later facing Terry Norris in 1991, the loser of the fight for the WBC title. You know what's funny though? Sugar Ray Leonard, instead of facing Julian Jackson, and I only knew this because Julian Jackson's going to be facing Frank Tate again in the second fight. Not Frank Tate, the other Tate. Sorry, my bad. And a follow-up exhibition fight, right? They're going to fight another fight. But I only knew it because of that. He was talking about how Sugar Ray Leonard hadn't given him a shot. Instead, he faced the loser, which was Terry Norris. And Terry Norris still beat him up. And at that time, the champions, were Julian Jackson, who was undefeated at 154, by the way, and world champion there. I think he was champion for 5 fights or 6 fights, something like that. But anyway, he was undefeated, at least as champion, not necessarily as a fighter, because Mike McCallum had already taken that oath. But Julian Jackson was, the one who I heard this from. And what was interesting about it is Sugar Ray Leonard ended up facing Roberto Duran for a third time at this weight class that was made for Sugar Ray Leonard, so he wouldn't have to fight at middleweight, even though he couldn't even make the weight for the weight class. I think he came in against Duran 159 pounds or something like that, which is middleweight. And Duran came in, I don't know what he came in, but Sugar Ray Leonard faced Roberto Duran instead of facing the then champions who were at middleweight and the then champions who were at junior middleweight. Now, I don't blame him. He would have been 32 years of age. I didn't blame him for doing that, but my thing is, everybody gives him a pass for doing that. But when, a fighter like Pacquiao or, a fighter who's, kind of, done so much in their career, hell of a lot more than Leonard did in his career. When they've done what they've done in their career, nobody gives them a pass. Oh, you must fight the young buck. You know what I mean? It never made no sense to me. But people generally speak out of their passions. If they like a fighter, they'll make a case for that fighter. If they don't like the fighter, they go, again, it's just an emotional thing. They go by their emotions, how they feel, not off of what factual information is actually there. So I say all of this to say that people speak nostalgia and mythos, and you have to separate the mythos from the facts. The facts are that people who are nostalgic for the past always feel that the past is better than the present. When in fact, boxing as a sport has evolved and boxers have gotten better. And I just give you the case with Marvin Hagler. If he was to face a Michael Nunn, or if he was to face Sumbu Kalimbe or Mike McCallum, I'm telling you right now, he'd more than likely lose those fights. He couldn't even beat the welterweight. He couldn't beat Sugar Ray Leonard. And these guys, Sugar Ray Leonard would never have beaten Michael Nunn. I can tell you that for a fact. Skill-wise, Michael Nunn was a much more skilled fighter than Sugar Ray Leonard was. Much more skilled fighter. And a much bigger fighter. physically as well. And the problem with, a lot of people who don't understand boxing is they can't see that the improvements from one generation to the next. They can't see the generations have actually gotten better. And using the ethics and also using the approach of previous generations, they have found themselves not having to use certain tools anymore and using other tools which are better. People can't see that. They don't understand how the sport has changed. So you hear them harping, but it's mostly an emotional harp. There's no factual basis under which they're speaking. Boxing as a sport evolves, people. You'll hear me say it over and over again. And the boxers are not getting worse, they're getting better. The fights may not be as exciting because the fighters are not as vulnerable at the highest level. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Roy Jones Jr. came out relatively recently before his fight with Mike Tyson, was talking about how boxers today are much more well conditioned than in the past. Now, I guess he's referring to Chris Eubank Jr. when he says that they don't have the knowledge of boxing as much as the past boxers had. But what I would tell Roy Jones Jr. is, no, they do. And some of them have better skills than the past boxers had. And have refined their tools and abilities into a very efficient machinery. They're more efficient than past boxers are. Past boxers used to gallop all around the ring and waste unnecessary energy, making unnecessary movements. And the more advanced fighters today are so precise, so viper-like, so well with their stances and how stable they are on their feet, how well balanced they are, and how they punch and exact moves, that a lot of these elite boxers today would beat the brakes off of past boxers. There are no unnecessary feints. Every movement has its purpose and reason. There is no unnecessary waist movement. There is no unnecessary foot movement. Wolves Run says, you always good. Shout out to you, brother. And this is what the OGs don't understand. They do not understand that, yes, the present fighters today have built off of some of the past skills and abilities, and boxing as a core sport has changed, yes, over time, over 200 years. But while building on that foundation, these younger fighters have refined it, and the people who have been coaching and training them have been sharpening up for specific things, so that not only are they sharper and much more refined in specific movements, but they've cut out some of the other skill sets that are unnecessary, because those skill sets, why they are unnecessary, because they found much more efficient ways of operating. And why fights are not as exciting today as, say, in the past. If you go and you check out what do you call it? If you go and watch Azteca or Telemundo or one of those Mexican channels, you'll see some great fights, what you would call great fights. I call them sloppy fights, but because though in those fights, and I've heard it from trainers, I've heard it from Virgil Hunter, I've heard it from the great this is a great trainer, what's his name, was John Molina's trainer. I can't remember his name right now, which is terrible. It'll come to me. Diego Krause's trainer, Sergey Lipinets' trainer. I forgot what his name is. Joe Goossen. Joe Goossen also said this. He said, you want to see guys with very exciting fights, you need guys who are vulnerable. You need fighters who have a certain vulnerability to them, so that you can get beautiful exchanges. A fight that was very interesting and intriguing was Juan Francisco Estrada versus Carlos Cuadras. What made that fight exciting was the fact that Carlos Cuadras and Juan Francisco Estrada were not following certain defensive principles. You can be an aggressor, but defensively responsible. You can throw combinations and be defensively responsible, but these guys weren't defensively responsible, which led to a certain degree of vulnerability. They were getting tagged with certain shots. They weren't making adjustments to their tagging. And as a result of them getting hit, it made the fight exciting. That's what happened in 80s fights. 80s fights were exciting because it wasn't a one-sided game where one guy was controlling another guy. It was where the momentum would shift because guys would show certain vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities changed the momentum of fights. So everybody remembers these exciting fights between, guys like Thomas Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard. Okay, fights between Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. Fights between Roberto Duran and Wilfredo Benitez, and Wilfredo Benitez and Sugar Ray Leonard, and Wilfredo Benitez and Thomas Hearns, and Thomas Hearns and Marvin Hagler. Okay, people remember these fights because they were exciting fights. Even Sugar Ray Leonard versus Donnie Lalonde, where Sugar Ray Leonard decided to stand there and duke it out with Donnie Lalonde, which was dumb as hell. But he decided to stand there and duke it out with him, right? Those kinds of fights were hell of exciting because the guys weren't fighting necessarily smart or defensively responsible necessarily. And so as a result of that, they had vulnerability. And vulnerability led to drama, and drama led to exciting fights. All right? So that kind of level of fight that you want, that kind of drama and vulnerability, that a lot of people, even the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., I heard a lot of people saying Roy was clinching a lot. He was infighting. It's called infighting, where you tie up your opponent, but you're still threading and throwing punches on the inside. It's called infighting. And Roy showed that aspect of his game. He wasn't just tying up and pushing Mike Tyson to the ropes and leaning on him. No. He was actually working Tyson's body, and Tyson was coming back and landing shots on the inside. But you guys couldn't see that because a lot of you guys are used to guys swinging. You like to see hands swing. You like to see drama in terms of big movements. You could not appreciate the infighting that was going on. You called it clinching and clinging, and you said Roy was clinging on for dear life, which was not true. Because he was pushing Mike Tyson backward. Why? If you're clinging for dear life, you wouldn't be pushing somebody backwards. You'd be clinging for dear life. You do not understand the difference between a desperation clinch who's actually working in there. Because you guys are so emotionally attached to Mike Tyson. It's because you want him to make you feel a certain way. And that's a selfish, gluttony kind of way of thinking. But nonetheless, people behave like that. So a lot of things are not factual. Let's go to another issue. Because I gotta drop these facts because facts need to be dropped. A lot of people say that and criticize the modern boxers today. Errol Spence is going to be facing Danny Garcia. And I've heard some of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. A guy said, he should be facing Terrence Crawford. He's wasting his life away. I looked at him like, stupid. Terrence Crawford said he doesn't want to face Errol Spence right now. He wants to make sure that Errol Spence is 100% because he got in an accident. The guy said, well, that was a year ago. I looked at him like, you're a stupid guy. You're really stupid. You're talking from your emotions. This is his first fight back, you dumbass. I really wanted to curse the guy out, but I didn't. And it's like, for me, people pick a side. It's kind of like what's happening in America today. People pick a side and decide to ride with that side, even if what they're saying is a bunch of rubbish. They're going to pick a side. And you get that same sort of mentality with certain people who are nostalgic and OGs and stuff like that, where they think their era is the greatest era ever, and there will never be another era like that. And I'm like, you got to let it go. You got to let it go. I remember, this is on a slightly different topic, where I was looking at, that's the whole reason why we have in boxing, some people divorce themselves from being fans of the sport and decided they're going to be I don't know what's the word. It's not connoisseurs, but they don't call themselves fans, and they try to analytically assess certain situations. But some people, in becoming so critical, they take away from the achievements of fighters. And one of the things I don't like doing is simply painting a critical picture of a fighter and not really giving the true picture of the fighter. What I mean by that is, for example, when I talked about Marvelous Marvin Hagler, I talked about the mythos of him, and I said that he really wasn't that of the mythos. However, Marvin Hagler was one of the hardest working middleweights you'll ever find because he never got his shine. And when he didn't finally start to get his shine, which he deserved, he worked hard at maintaining, you know, his level of performance. Always came in shape, always was ready to do work, and he really put in effort. He always was an active fighter, had really good body work, had a really nice jab, beautiful jab, you know, uh, fought mostly in the southpaw stance, but he could also fight in the orthodox stance. He was relentless. He worked with activity. He keep coming, didn't do so well fighting going backwards, but he could do it. Kind of like Triple G, right? So he's a little bit more skilled than Triple G. Okay, let's just be real. But the point is that you can't take away the good things he's done. And he did beat Thomas Hearns, Thomas Hearns went on to fight at cruiserweight, 190, all the way up to championships, all the way up there. Well, he didn't win a world championship at 190, but he did win a championship at 190. And why that's important? It's important because a lot of times, in critiquing somebody, sometimes you focus so much on the negative of them. My thing was just to show you the amount of realism in the situation. I'm not saying that Marvelous Marvin Hagler was not a hell of a fighter. He was a hell of a fighter. All right. My thing was to say, when you really analyze his resume, when you really analyze the opponents he's faced, when you really go and watch his fights with these opponents, and then you look at the guys that came after him, a lot of people put a lot of flack on the guys that came after him and say he would just beat this guy or beat that guy. That's based on mythos. But in the reality of the situation, a lot of those guys really either give him the business or they would beat him straight up. They'd beat a guy like Marvin Hagler. James Toney wasn't the most committed guy. In fact, he was a lazy motherfucker. That's the problem with James Toney. He didn't like to train. He liked to spar, but he didn't like to train. So he never really he most of his career he was based off his God gifting and his early training. He never really advanced himself and improved himself. Liked fighting, but he didn't like learning and sharpening up his tools. He could have been so much better. Right? Roy Jones Jr. was the epitome of everything. Roy Jones, you would watch the doormat with Marvin Hagler. You would watch the floor with him. Okay? Michael Nunn would knock him out. Michael Nunn would knock him out. Marvin Hagler's not that big a dude. Okay? And we all know Michael Nunn was a big dude. Period. Bigger than Thomas Hearns. Okay? And could punch. Okay? So, I mean, and could box. I mean, that was his thing. He was a boxer. So it's like, when you think about the only guy that knocked out Michael Nunn was James Toney. And that was on Michael Nunn's fault. That was his fault. He got cocky and he got knocked out. He gave James Toney the opportunity. That was his fault. But with respect to Michael Nunn, very difficult opponent. Very difficult opponent. Got the reach, got the range. Know he's going to use the reach. Know he's going to use the range. Can fight on the inside. Can fight on the outside. Has a good chin and everything. Michael Nunn's a problem. Okay? Saloon Kalimbe on the uprise, hungry, slick like crazy. He was a very slick fighter, Could Marvin Hagler have beaten him? Probably, but he didn't face him. Frank Tate, same thing. Frank Tate only got knocked out by one guy, Michael Nunn. Slick guy. world champion, right? So my point, I'm not saying that those guys would definitely beat Marvin. I know Tony would have done it. James Tony would have beaten his ass. Mike McCallum would have beaten his ass. Roy would have beaten his ass. Point blank, period. That's what I believe that. Julian Jackson might have knocked him out. Okay, Michael Nunn definitely would have beat his ass. But when it comes to I'm talking about the caliber of opposition that Hagler faced compared to these guys, which in and of themselves, they're Hall of Famers themselves, and I'm speaking about every last one of them. Well, not so much Colombier. Even Colombier was a long reigning 161, and he was a 168 champion, I believe. I would say that those guys, did quite a lot in boxing and faced quite a lot of names in boxing to make me say, oh, these guys definitely could have handled with Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler was one of the smaller guys, actually, that these guys would have faced. I'm not saying this to bash Marvin Hagler because he was a hell of a fighter. I still think he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. But my point is, we need to put it in context. And a lot of times we're not putting things in context. I look at how critical people are of Pacquiao and Mayweather. I mean, are you serious? Do you see what these motherfuckers have accomplished? Like, come on, man. Like, you gotta give it to these guys. But a lot of people either hate Pacquiao or hate Mayweather, and they can't understand how exceptional these guys were. Joe Goosen again. I go back to Joe Goosen. And Joe Goosen says Manny Pacquiao is emphatically one of the greatest fighters ever. There's no doubt about that. And Mayweather beat him, he said. And we, somehow the conversation got around to Canelo. And he said, again, pound for pound, this guy's, he's the guy right now. And Mayweather beat him too. Yeah, whatever you want to say, he beat him. The point being this. There's no denying that Manny Pacquiao and Canelo Alvarez are special fighters. No denying. In any era, Canelo would handle his own. In any era, Manny Pacquiao would handle his own. They're all-time greats. And Canelo's career is not even done. Neither is, amazingly, I'm saying this right now with my eyes open very wide, neither is Pacquiao's. And that just in and of itself, the fact that I'm even saying that Manny Pacquiao's career is not even over, and he started before Floyd Mayweather in 1995, is just baffling. Okay? You say what you want about Manny Pacquiao. There's no denying him that he's great. No denying him whatsoever. I think he should be ranked higher in the pound for pound list that's currently out there. And it's so ironic. And in an era where Manny Pacquiao is still boxing at the age of 41 years old, going on 42 this December, it's amazing that people are still criticizing this dude. Okay, they are asterisks and caveats on him. But I hear people say the Four Kings would beat Manny Pacquiao. And I'm like, how can you say that with certainty, my friend? How? Well, because Mayweather beat him. I look at them like, are you out of your fucking mind? This guy just beat Keith Thurman. It's kind of like people think that for some reason boxers actually got worse over time. And it's a thing that I'm mystified by it. I am mystified by it. I am mystified that people in boxing could be so bamboozled. To think that a guy in the 1980s would beat a guy who has superseded every single fucking expectation ever, had a style that would have given that dude so much problems. So much problems. Pacquiao has a busy style. You can't even catch Pacquiao like that. He has to be coming to you for you to counter him. Duran would have all kinds of problems. Chavez would have all kinds of problems with that kid. Because he's like a fly. He's buzzing in and out on you. I can't understand why people can't understand how difficult Pacquiao is. If Leonard could do it, then he would have done it against Aaron Pryor. If Leonard could do it, then everybody was talking after Mayweather beat Pacquiao. Timothy Bradley was chirping like a bird. Oh, I'm gonna beat him this time. What happened? Pacquiao dropped him twice. Jesse Vargas thought he could beat Pacquiao because Mayweather beat Pacquiao. He got dropped once. Right? Keith Thurman was like, Mayweather handled him. Jeff Horn handled him. I'll handle him. And he got dropped. And then he got hit with a body shot. Adrian Broner said, when Mayweather handled him, I could handle him. And he got washed. So who's to say that because Mayweather handled Pacquiao so easily, Sugar Ray Leonard could do it? Because of his legend? What's his style like? There's these kinds of things. I'm trying to help people understand. Listen, a lot of people talk things and they don't think things through. They talk, but they don't think things through. Pacquiao's not easy to beat. It's not just, he's a walk in the park. Even Terrence Crawford got acknowledged, Manny Pacquiao's a great champion. And he will pose problems. Terrence Crawford understands that. Old as he is, Pacquiao, 42 years old, will be 42 years old next year. He is problems for anybody. And I'm just saying this not to say that Pacquiao doesn't take punishment. He definitely takes punishment. And that's why, for me, again, I think Pacquiao should go the smarter route. With the days of them young guns fighting them, I think they're over. I think he should pick somebody to face or fight who is either up in age or not as serious a threat as those young guns right now. He don't need that in his life. Yes, he could win. Probably, it's very always possible that Pacquiao could win those fights. I don't rule anything past Pacquiao. But the punishment he took against Keith Thurman, I didn't like that. To win, what does it cost you to win a fight? Why do you need it? That's not necessary. And this is a different kind of language. This is a different kind of talk to what the average nostalgic fan wants to hear, because they want to fight. They want to see blood and gore and guts and guys fight through it. They want to see the old Pacquiao. And hell no. I'm saying no. You have a life and a future ahead of you. You have the presidency of the Philippines to go take up. You got people to manage and take care underneath. You need as much clarity in your senses and in your body as possible. And while Pacquiao may want to take the biggest challenge and test himself, and that's within his rights to do, that is crazy if you go stepping into that ring and you take that same or worse punishment than you got from Keith Thurman. What are you proving? What you actually proved? There must come a point in time where common sense must prevail. So, for me, and he's taken his good share of punishment in his career, the brain was not made to be rattled like that. You take he had a nice big long break from boxing, but still, the brain wasn't made to be rattled like that all the time. Mike Tyson, he took a huge break from boxing, 15 years. So if he got hit upside the head, the brain wasn't rattled all those 15 years. So it could be dangerous, but if you prepped it properly, it wouldn't be as bad. But if you've been taking that pounding since 1995, that's 25. That's how many years? That's 35 years of taking and pounding. Okay, you're out of your fucking mind if you're going to just go keep on taking poundings like that. You might have gotten used to it, but fuck, that is not good for your body. It's going to affect you when you're 60, you're 70 years old, you're 80 years old if you live that long. So guys need to be more conscientious and smart. That's why Floyd said, I'm a smart guy. I'm stupid. I'm not going in there with those youngsters. Hagler will spare that. So he's preserved his body. You know, he didn't take that kind of pounding. And so the point behind that is that you have to use a certain degree of discretion and control over yourself. Hagler got out of the game early, made his money, and he got out of the game, which was a smart thing to do. Andre Ward, I give him mad props because he got out of the game at the right time. Timothy Bradley, he a little cuckoo, but he got out of the game. Hopefully, he continues to treat his body, get that oxygen, get that stuff, because he starts some crazy stuff sometimes. Timothy Bradley need to be careful. And I see he's out of shape. He eats too much. Try to keep yourself in shape too, Ninja. We have too many fighters that have been damaged by boxing. Just because the fans will be raying and everything. And then at the end of the day, after these people have died and gone, fans don't care about you. Fans don't talk about you. And so many fighters have given so many tremendous fights. Nobody remembers them. Nobody's talking about Wilfredo Benitez right now. And he needs support and help because he can't move. Nobody's talking about his debilitating disease. And he was supposed to be supposedly one of the greatest defensive fighters of all time. So, if we as fans won't support them when they're sick and ill, why the hell care that the fans want blood, guts, and gore from some fighters? And they want them at their advanced age when they should be taking care of their bodies and trying to get out the sport to be taking on challenges and fights which could harm them irreparably for the rest of their lives. That's stupid. I back Sugar Ray Leonard. He ain't supposed to be taking no more punches. He's taking enough punches while he was younger. And that's enough. He don't want to ever go into a ring ever again. I'm not against him. That's a smart thing to do. So, at the end of the day, boxing has changed. And the nostalgia of fans and the ridiculousness of fans, sometimes, I call them out on it. I'm a fan myself, so I can afford to do that. I can afford to call out fans on the ridiculousness of what they're doing. Because I'm a fan myself. Everybody said, well, you need the fans to be able to sell fights. That's true. But I don't want dumbass fans watching my fights and then speaking bad about them. You want to have knowledgeable fans of boxing. And bit by bit, we're getting those kinds of people. And, I want to just give a shout out to Fight Hub TV and Marcus Villegas, because he's doing a good job, speaking on boxing, educating fans, and discouraging fans from saying stupid things. The other person is Showbiz the Adult. I really like how he has a positive spin on things. But again, it's to educate the fans, have the fans understand the sport a lot more. That's the purpose of my channel. My channel is not here for me to gloat over my knowledge or anything like that. I don't care about that. I care about people in boxing looking at boxing in a much more educated way. And I've been trained for the last week. So I put on weight, all kinds of stuff. I'm looking at myself. I'm like, you put on some size. I need to cut and shave my ear and everything. But I just I would share this video. This is the second video for the day, I think it is. And those thoughts came through my mind about old school versus new school, and what people seem not to see or seem not to appreciate about old school and new school boxing. Both schools are great, for what they are. And What we call old school boxing has actually changed over several years. All right, you know, from the stances to how guys approached the sport. And one of the most beautiful things about it is that it's not something that people haven't said for many years. That is to say that guys of earlier eras would critique guys of later eras and say, that era wasn't as good as this era. And people do that all the time. I remember Joe Louis going in on Muhammad Ali, that he wouldn't survive in his time, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, that's always been there. But the thing about it is that thank God for guys like Sugar Ray Robinson who supported Muhammad Ali and thought he was doing a great job. And Muhammad Ali, obviously, Sugar Ray Robinson being his mentor of some sorts, appreciated that. Right. So I just feel like guys like George Foreman are really good guys because George Foreman, one of the things about George Foreman is he doesn't always say the most realistic things, but he's very encouraging about what he has to say. And I truly believe as a sport, it's good to be encouraging. It's good to be positive, especially if you're exercising a lot. It's good to be encouraging. It's good to be supportive of one another. All the greats from the beginning of glove boxing to now all contributed to the sport moving forward. So I like to say it like this because a lot of people like to say don't disrespect the greats, yet you disrespect the greats. Okay, so stop with the BS. But I would like to say to people out there that as a sport, you need to understand how a lot of players and a lot of people in the Boxing Hall of Fame and a lot of people not in the Boxing Hall of Fame, how they contributed to pushing the sport forward. Because once again, a lot of people never understood what you need was bringing to the table. Hey, man, EJ Boxing Live, what's up, bro? Yeah, never understood what you need was about. What you need was always about boxing moving forward, and not necessarily about any one specific era or any one specific thing. I'm always about how it progresses forward. EJ Boxing Night says, old school all day. All right, all right. He said, mate, how you doing, bro? I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm making it through this pandemic. How you doing? You good, champ? Yeah, yeah. I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. I'm great. Still need to get back into training though. Get back into training. I'm a little bit I'm a little bit offbeat. Your body feels like it's slow and sluggish when you don't train. When you're training, it feels great. When you're not training, it's like crap. I was looking at how Nate got slept by Jake. What do you think about that? How Nate got slept by Jake? I'm doing a live streaming in an hour. Jump on. Okay, if I'm up, man, sure, absolutely. I was looking at how Nate Robinson got slept by Jake, and a lot of people are laughing about that. But I'm thinking, if it was me in that situation, wouldn't I behave the same way? I mean, if I haven't sparred, if I haven't really done the serious groundwork, I mean, I'll be bum rushing the motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Because it gets shorter arms and everything. EJ Boxing Live says Thursday, December 3rd, Los Angeles, NBC Sports Net, Sandy Duverson versus Brandon Adams. Brandon Adams, for real, 10 rounds, junior 2 hours. Nice. Yeah, that was really bad. I picked Nate. You picked Nate to beat Jake? For real? Yo, listen, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think Jake Paul. I'm gonna be honest because I'm honest. I'm an honest guy like that. I picked Jake Paul to beat JJ. I picked Jake Paul to beat KSI. Now, I look at Jake Paul and I'm like, yeah, this kid actually got it. He actually got the fight in him, and not just the fight in him, but he's got that. He got that eye. He's got that eye for detail, and he really is a killer. I heard he's training like fucking crazy. Jake keeps on training every day. Like he take a little break and he's back in it. It's sad to see that. I've been knowing from the NBA. Nah, Nate Robinson's cool. He's cool. He's cool. He gonna be all right. I hope he gets back into the ring, and I hope he fights another fight. I think he was just too he caught up in the moment. I think after I saw I saw in the face off, he showed that as he was about to really face Jake, and he saw how big Jake really was. I got the feeling that like he he was double thinking and double guessing himself, and he decided to bum rush. He decided to bum rush Jake. Put that hood into him, and he went all street on Jake. But you can't bum rush a guy like that, man. The same thing happened with the other kid that faced him. He was bum rushing him. He got caught with check hook. In this case, Nate was bum rushing his ass. You can't do that. But I could see myself doing the same shit. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, I've been hit upside my head. I'm telling you, bro. It's not the same. It's not the same shit, dude. It's not the same shit. All the plans and everything go out the window, bro. You get into survival mode. All you looking to do is crap. You have to have composure. It's not what people think. It's like man, boxing is totally different than what people think it is. Uh, I've been known from the NBA and was thinking he was trained correct. He was trained correct. I heard who was saying that? Oh shit. The guy said he was in the training camps and everything. Zab Judah. Zab Judah said, yeah, man, Nate was doing the right things and everything. He was doing the right things. But man, the moment, you can't you have to experience it. You can't train for that shit. When he realized the moment was really there, and he was across the ring and the guy, I'm not gonna lie, Jake Paul's a big dude. He's a big 6 feet something, and he's solid. That motherfucker is solid. Now, bro, he trained wrong. Now, Zab Judah said, he was watching him, he was training well and everything, pads and running, all that shit. I hope he was sparring. I hope he was sparring and shit. And Nate been training for years. I heard he been training, for years. He been, training. So, but he didn't understand. It's like, Jake is being trained by BJ Flores. You know what I mean? That's a really good fighter. BJ Flores, very good cruiserweight fighter. Yeah, Jake, yeah, he countered him. Yeah, he just countered him coming in because he's bum rushing him in. He straightened him out with the jab, and he caught him with the overhand right. Boom. And he repeatedly get just pull back and pull the trigger. Yup. Yup. It's like fundamentals. But you know what, bro? In the moment, bro. In the moment, it's not like fuck, man. In the moment, it's not the same. I mean, Jacob been sparring. He been sparring guys though. He been sparring. He been getting the good work. He been getting good work from good fighters and everything. You know what I mean? So he kind of was more ready. I think he was more ready than Nate for the moment. You know what I mean? Because Jake's right there in Vegas. You know what I mean? He's right up in it, and he got himself immersed in it. He probably got his ass whooped a number of times, got beat upside the head a number of times, so he got used to that. You know what I mean? Nate sparring was with fight his own size, bro. Probably wrong trainer. I don't know if it was his trainer. I mean, he looked like there was certain moments in the fight. Snoop was talking about he ain't got no defense, and then he actually calmed down a bit and was actually letting Jake come to him, and he was using his jab pretty well. Nate, and he was even switch hitting and shit. Nate got skills, man, but it's just I think the moment just overwhelmed him, and he started bum rushing and clinching. You know, he got afraid. He panicked. He got too excited. I think that's what really happened. I think he can redeem himself in the next fight against an opponent not so high profile. You know, take his time. Calm the fuck down. Take his time, and then he'll fight because I think he has it. I could see different elements that he has, but I'm telling you, man. I mean, I got pop upside my head, sparring and shit, and I lost my shit. I forgot what I was doing. you know. It's what it is. I mean, you could have a great analytical mind, for boxing and all of that, but it's different in there. You know that. You know it's different in there. It's different in there. Shit, I mean, Nate got balls to do that on such a high level, on a big platform. Because why I say such a high level is not necessarily that Jake is like those elite boxers or anything, but just on that big, humongous platform. He stepped up to the plate, came up short, but I mean, he stepped up to the plate. He just realized how enormous the moment. He began to face the reality of what he was going to face, and the guy next to him, he was just not ready for it. He was not ready for it. He froze at the top level. He froze. Even with JJ, when JJ faced Logan Paul, you know, when I saw JJ in sparring, the clips that they had, JJ looked like a beast. He was like fucking bobbing and weaving and throwing his jab. And when he went in to face Logan Paul, it was a totally different JJ. Wasn't listening to his corner. Was bum rushing Logan Paul. He was bobbing and weaving a little bit, slipping aside, but he was bum rushing and he was swinging wild fucking windmill right hands. And I was like, what the fuck? This is not what we saw in training. you know, some crazy ass shit. Guys do some crazy stuff. They go back to, like Zab Judah said, he went right back to day one. Like all the training. And I say that's because it's not in muscle memory. You can't be thinking in there. You don't have time to actually practically think through the situations. You have to have this thing ingrained inside of you. That's just a reaction that will happen. Otherwise, you're gonna just go wild. You know what I mean? If it's not in there, because you don't have time to think in there. Everything happens so fast. You know what I mean? You don't have time to think in there. And I think that's what actually happens. For experiencing sparring, like everything happens so fast sometimes. The shit be quicker than you could even process sometimes. And that's because if you don't have it instinctively in you to do certain things because they're not naturally ingrained in your DNA. What I mean by that, they like to say DNA, but when it's not naturally ingrained in your boxing, like it's not second nature to you to react a certain way, you know, you end up getting popped upside the head, or you start to say, man, fuck that. You start bum rushing motherfuckers. You go back to your innate self. Your true self comes out. That's what happened with Nate. Nate was like, kill or be killed. Fuck this. I don't think it matters who trains him. I think the more important thing is repetition. Now that he's experienced it, he might have gotten sparked out, but now that he's experienced it, I think he should, having that experience was great because I hope he doesn't give up. I hope he goes back. Um, the only bad thing is he's tasted the canvas, so that's somewhere inside of his mind. So it's kind of easier to get dropped. But other than that, I mean, in sparring, we get dropped in sparring. You can get dropped in sparring. I got busted lip in sparring and shit. It happens. Shit happens, right? So shit happens, right? Now, to know if you really are what you are, you gonna go right back in. That is kind of crazy to think about, but you know, we all know sometimes you get laughed at, sometimes people laugh at you, whatever. But at the end of the day, you going back in, and I think that's the difference between a boxer and maybe somebody else who's says, this shit is not for me. You gotta be a little crazy, man. You gotta be a little crazy to hit upside the head and you going right back in there to to execute whatever you want to do. Because you could really get thumped up in there. You know that for a fact. You could get savaged, destroyed, and never, never box again. Fuck that. You could get messed up really bad. So what I mean, but I do have a lot of respect for guys who step into the ring because I realize you could be the smartest guy with the greatest game plan, but if you don't have the ability to 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 get yourself to that point where you you can get into that routine to execute anything of a semblance of a game plan. What difference does it make? You know what I mean? If you could just get yourself, because sometimes your whole entire body is resisting. Your body's resisting because it does not want to do that. It resists the opportunity for you to do what you want to do. Your body's operating totally different. You know what I'm talking about? Like your body's saying no, no. Your body actually could shut down. Some people, they get into the fight mode, so they just all fighting. They just get like, they lose their mind and just go in fight mode. Other people are in flight mode, and they're like, "Fuck, this is not for me." You know what I mean? So, I mean, we all get to know who we really are, you know, the first time we get popped upside the head like that. You know what I mean? And some of us don't even know what the hell happened because we just get beat up so bad that we don't even know what's happening. We not even processing that shit. We just know we're not going to do that ever again. I love it. I love it, man. I love boxing. I love boxing. It really proves to us what we are, what we really want to do with ourselves. You know what I mean? Um, it's crazy, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's crazy, man. I can laugh at it now, but it wasn't funny at the time. um, so I can kind of identify with him, in terms of getting slept like that. Well, I can identify with getting slept because I've never been slept, but I can identify with kind of switching modes and all logic and reasoning just fly out the window. You know what I mean? So, and getting overwhelmed by a moment like that, the reality sinks in of the moment. I think that's what happened to him. Anyway, so I was talking about old school versus new school for several different reasons. But one of the things I just wanted to say is I'm not here to hate on nobody or nothing like that. My philosophy is though that we must tell the truth about a situation. And I think I just truly believe, and I will always believe, that boxing has not gone backwards. There's a lot of stupid things happening in boxing, but that's always been like that for as long as I do remember. There's always been some sort of controversy in boxing. But I think that as the fight, with respect to the fighters themselves and how they conduct themselves in boxing, I think a lot of that has changed quite a lot. And a lot of boxers are more, I think, well, because of, I just think that boxers are more committed to boxing, and there's a lot of sports science, a lot of other things that have played a role besides just the actual schooling and the actual boxing itself, and just the nature of boxing. I think that has carried it forward, not backwards. And I just think that you know, there's a lot more to see. I think that the future is bright with professional boxing matches. I did appreciate Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. getting a shot from the past. I was glad to be a little bit nostalgic. I saw the potential in the matchup. I saw how the styles interacted with each other. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed predicting the fight, even though my prediction still came out false. Roy didn't beat. I don't think he beat Mike Tyson. If anything, I thought Mike Tyson landed the hardest shots. But the draw was okay, and I think that though Roy did do a lot of good inside work. He did a lot of good inside work that a lot of people are not giving him credit for, and I thought it was amazing that he actually did that. Um, but once again, I just want to say that I appreciate watching and black and white footage and all kinds of things when it comes to boxing. I really appreciate it. I do appreciate also the foundation and the contributions that different people in boxing have brought to the sport. And was it not for these guys, man, we wouldn't be where we are at, talking about boxing. So obviously their contributions is tremendous, tremendous contributions to boxing. And but it's just that, like, I have certain pet peeves with how people describe certain boxers, like how they tore down Roy Jones Jr., for example, who is bar none supposed to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame. You know, that man belongs in the Boxing Hall of Fame. You know, one of the greatest fighters of all time, one of the greatest fighters of all time. You know, Roy Jones Jr. We've never seen anything like a Roy Jones Jr. ever in the history of boxing. You know, and it just goes to show again, once we see, just a shadow of these guys on display. I was listening to some guys in some boxing groups talking down Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr., that they thought it was a fake fight and all these rules and regulations. I was like, listen, you just saw a style matchup with two of the most outstanding boxers of the last, um, what is it? 1990 to 2000s, like how many years? 40, 30, last 30 years, 35, 25. Yeah, the last 30 years. Okay. So I don't understand. Roy's a special fighter. So you shouldn't have expected Mike Tyson to be able to just run through Roy. And Roy brings certain things to the table. Similarly, Mike Tyson's a very special fighter. I didn't expect Roy to run through Mike Tyson, you know. But like my prediction video was saying, I did not expect. I expected, because I knew Roy brings a lot of other skills to the table. He does a lot of things. I expected Roy to win the fight only because I thought that Roy would be able to outbox Mike Tyson and he would outlast like Mike Tyson. But what I did not expect was for Mike Tyson to be able to bring that energy all the way to the end and actually finish strong at the end of the fight. And so I was very impressed with Mike Tyson's performance in those 2-minute rounds, and the fact that he stayed fresh for an entire fight. I know it was less time than if it was 3-minute rounds, but I think 2-minute rounds kept the excitement and the energy of the fight going anyway. It probably would have been more boring because Roy would have fought more on the inside and clinched a lot more. So, and I'm excited for Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield if that fight ever happens. I already put down my suggestions to Mike Tyson. One of them was, learning how to resist the clinch. Um, and the second thing I think that Mike Tyson could bring to his game is the fact that, he, um, what did I say? It was two things. It was resist the clinch. Oh, yeah. Don't stand directly in front of your opponent, right? Sidestep him, shift a little bit, circle, do something, move. Don't stay still. Your still target is an easy target to get at. So that's the two things I think Mike Tyson just needs to add to his game. Just, don't be a stationary target. Don't freeze up in front of your opponent. That makes you a target. And of course, learn how to break the clinch. Learn how to break clinches, because when guys can't clinch you, then you have much more advantage on them of landing body shots and headshots and whatever else you want to do. So I think that Mike Tyson, uh, in terms of these exhibitions, is performing extraordinarily well for a 54-year-old, in my opinion. Um, guys who are a lot younger can't do half those things that Mike Tyson was doing in that ring. And I was really very, very impressed with um, how he was able to, keep the pressure on, keep pushing. A lot of people was laughing and joking, but those two guys weren't laughing and joking in the ring. Mike Tyson was trying to take Roy's head off. Roy did certain things to take away his hooks to the head. He did some things to take away his uppercut on the inside. Mike got one uppercut threaded through the middle and caught Roy with the uppercut finally. He did certain things to get Mike Tyson couldn't use his trademark moves, so Mike Tyson adjusted and did some other things, which I thought was very good. Roy kind of nullified them by rolling his body, rolling himself. So anyway, my point is that, in boxing and in the world in general, I just want to say that I cannot repeat it enough that modern day boxing, what's happening now, is a step up, I believe, than what you've seen in the past. I'm gonna say that over and over. I'm a proponent of that. I have no problems saying that, guys like Mayweather are going to be guys who would be beaten by some of the future guys that coming up, even in this era of boxing. Errol Spence, or Terrence Crawford probably would beat Floyd Mayweather. You know, Given a little time, they prove it. And these are things that a lot of people are not willing to say. They're not willing to let go. For me to say LeBron James, if he had a team, would beat Magic Jordan if he had a team, because LeBron's much more giving with the ball and stuff like that. Um, I don't have a problem saying that. Michael Jordan was, I thought, when it comes to self possessions, he was a very creative fighter, for creative basketball player. But I think that because he wasn't really known as the guy that would pass the ball and distribute the ball to other players, I think LeBron, his team would win. and we have a precedent with that. Will Chamberlain versus Bill Russell. Bill Russell distributed the ball, and his Celtics won so many different championships. Whereas the incredible Will Chamberlain with his Lakers team could not, get the majority of wins over a Bill Russell team. So we've seen that template before. That LeBron is like a Magic Johnson or a Bill Russell, whereas you know Michael Jordan is more like a Dr. J or a Will Chamberlain, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just analysis. It's not just about uh, who you like. I like Michael Jordan. He's my time. I grow up under Michael Jordan, but I'm not going to be foolish and not assess the skill sets and the strengths of LeBron James. This man went to three different teams and brought championships to three different teams. Something Michael Jordan hasn't done, something that Bill Russell never did, something that Will Chamberlain never did. You got to factor these things in. Okay, so the game changed some, the basketball game, but it's been changing all along. It wasn't the same game. The game that Michael Jordan played in, or the era that Michael Jordan wasn't the same era as Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell played in. It wasn't the same era that Larry Bird and the Detroit Pistons and the LA Lakers played in, right? So I mean, it kind of overlapped, but it wasn't the same, right? So we can't look at just you know you know certain factors and ignore other factors, because all sports evolve, all sports change, but it's not for the worse, it's for the better. So that's all I got to say for now. um, I'm what you need. You've been watching my channel. If you guys took time out to watch this video, don't forget you can like, share, subscribe. You can donate via Western Union MoneyGram. I'm gonna catch you guys later, but I had to talk about this. Peace.